The recording device hummed softly in the quiet room. Commander Vexthul sat across from two young Zephyrian officers, his forearms resting on the metal table. His blue skin looked pale under the bright lights. 3 years had passed since the war ended, but the fear still lived in his multiple eyes. "Tell us about the humans," said Officer Krillnex, leaning forward. He was young and eager. He had never seen battle. "How did they defeat our mighty empire?" Vexthul clicked his mandibles slowly. The sound echoed in the small room. "You think this is about winning and losing. You think you understand war. But humans do not fight like other species. They fight like the universe is trying to kill them every single day." The second officer, Zarhun, activated her data pad. "Begin with first contact. Tell us everything." The old warrior's eyes grew distant. He remembered that day clearly. Too clearly. It was the year 2157 by human counting. Our scout fleets found them in the Tau Ceti system. 12 ships full of humans trying to build a new home on a dead rock they called New Montana. They looked weak. Vexthul continued. Small, soft, pink skin that tears easily. Only 2 arms. 2 eyes. They seemed like children playing with technology they barely understood. Our empire had conquered 47 star systems. We had destroyed species that were stronger, faster, smarter than these humans. Officer Krillnex made notes on his pad. "What made you think they would be easy to defeat?" "Everything," Vexthul said with a bitter laugh. "They had no energy shields. Their weapons were simple chemical explosives. Their ships were slow and ugly. They built their colony with machines that dug dirt and cut trees. Farming equipment, mining tools. Not a single military vessel in sight." The commander stood and walked to the small window. Outside, the alien city stretched toward the horizon. "We sent them a message. Standard protocol. Surrender your world and join the Empire or be destroyed. Most species choose surrender, the smart ones do." "What did the humans say?" Zarhun asked. "They said no." Vexthul turned back to face them. Not just no. They laughed. A human named Jake Morrison, their colony leader, sent back a message. He said, "Come and take it if you can." Then he cut the communication. The young officers looked at each other. "That was foolish," Krillnex said. "One colony against a battle fleet." "We thought so too," Vexthul agreed. "Admiral Zektar commanded our fleet, 50 warships, enough firepower to turn that planet into glass. He ordered a simple assault. Land troops eliminate resistance, claim the colony. A routine operation." The old warrior sat back down. His hands shook slightly as he reached for a cup of water. "I was a young captain then, commanding my first assault team. 300 elite soldiers, the best equipment. We had fought on 20 worlds, never lost a battle." "Tell us about the landing," Zarhun prompted. "We came down in dropships at dawn. The colony looked quiet. Too quiet. Our scanners showed humans hiding in buildings, in caves, behind farming equipment. We expected them to run or surrender when they saw us coming." Vexthul paused, remembering. "Instead, they started singing." "Singing?" Krillnex looked confused. "A human war song. Something about their flag still being there after a battle. Their voices carried across the valley. Hundreds of them singing together. It should have been funny. Instead, it made my soldiers nervous." The commander's voice grew quieter. Then Jake Morrison walked out of the main building. Alone. No weapons. He stood in the middle of the landing zone and waited for us to surround him. "What did he do?" "He smiled," Vexthul said. "That terrible human smile. Then he said, 'Welcome to Montana, boys. Hope you brought a lunch. You're going to be here a while.'" The old warrior began pacing again. I ordered him to surrender. He laughed and pointed to the sky. Our dropships were exploding one by one, silent explosions like flowers of fire. "How?" Zarhun asked. "We saw no anti-aircraft weapons." "Because they were not weapons," Vexthul explained. "The humans had turned their mining charges into bombs, hidden them in the ground. When our ships flew over, they triggered them. Simple, effective, insane. But surely your soldiers could handle farmers and miners, Krillnek said. Vexthul stopped, pacing and looked directly at him. That is what we thought. That is why we died. These were not farmers and miners anymore. Overnight they had become something else, something dangerous. The commander sat down again. Morrison raised his hand. The singing stopped. Then the real attack began. Their tractors came rolling over the hills, but they were not tractors anymore. The humans had welded metal plates on them, mounted weapons, turned farming equipment into war machines. Their leader was a woman named Lisa Campbell, a farmer who grew corn and raised cattle. When the war started, she became a tank commander. She drove her armored tractors straight through our defensive line. Our energy weapons could not penetrate the thick metal plating. Vexthul's mandibles clicked rapidly. Behind the tractors came more humans. A man called Tony Rodriguez led them. He was a mechanic who fixed farming machines. But he had turned their tools into weapons. Welding torches became flamethrowers. Hydraulic cutters became armor-piercing. Weapons. How many humans were there? Zarhun asked. Maybe 2,000 in the whole colony. Men, women, children, all fighting. The children ran messages between groups. The women fought beside the men. The old ones made bombs in basements. Everyone had a job. Everyone was dangerous. The old warrior took another drink of water. We had trained for war against soldiers. Professional fighters with predictable tactics. But humans do not fight like soldiers. They fight like every battle might be their last. Rodriguez found our communication equipment. Instead of destroying it, he used it to call for help. Not from other human colonies. From anyone who would listen. He broadcast on every frequency telling the galaxy that humans would not surrender, that they would fight until the last person was dead. Other species ignored the message, Krillnek said. Yes, but humans in other colonies heard it, and they started coming, in cargo ships, in passenger transports, in anything that could fly. They came to fight for people they had never met, on a world they had never seen. Vexthul stood again. By the third day, our 50 warships faced 300 human vessels, fishing boats with weapons welded on, school ships carrying teachers who had learned to shoot, medical transports full of doctors who treated wounds by day and made explosives by night. What happened to Admiral Zektar? He called for reinforcements. The Empire sent another 100 ships. The humans kept coming too. More ships, more volunteers, more people willing to die for strangers. The commander walked back to the window. That is when I first understood. This was not about New Montana. This was not about territory or resources. For humans, every fight is personal. Every battle is about survival. Not just their own survival. The survival of everyone they consider human. On the 5th day, a human child found me wounded in the ruins of my dropship. A little girl, maybe 10 years old. She could have killed me. Instead, she brought me water and bandaged my wounds. Then she asked me why we wanted to hurt her family. What did you tell her? I told her it was war. She said that was stupid. That war was when people could not think of anything better to do. Then she asked if I had children. When I said yes, she asked if I missed them. Vexthul turned back to face the young officers. That night, I heard Jake Morrison talking to his people. He said they had won the battle. The Empire ships were leaving, but he also said this was just the beginning, that more enemies would come, that humans had to be ready. He was right, Zarhun said quietly. Yes. But I was still there, wounded and captured. I listened to them plan. Not just defense plans. They talked about going to other worlds, finding other species that needed help, building ships that could fight anywhere in the galaxy. The old warrior sat down one final time. That little girl came back the next morning. She brought me food and asked if I wanted to send a message to my children. When I said yes, she helped me record it. Then she asked if I would tell them to stop fighting humans. Did you? I tried to warn my people. I tried to tell them that humans were not like other species, that they did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought for each other, for ideas, for the future. Vexthul looked at both officers. No one listened. The Empire decided to teach humans a lesson. to show them what happened to species that defied us. We sent fleets to attack their other colonies, their homeworld, their sacred places. That was a mistake, Krillneck said. The greatest mistake in the history of our empire, Vexthul agreed. Because humans do not just defend. When you threaten their families, their homes, their people, they become something else entirely. Something that should not exist in a civilized galaxy. The recording device continued to hum. The old warrior looked tired, older than his years. You want to know how humans defeated us? The truth is simple. We thought we were fighting a war. They knew they were fighting for their lives. And humans will do anything, become anything, sacrifice anything, to stay alive. Officer Zarhun leaned forward. Tell us about the real battles, the ones that made the Empire surrender. Vexthul's eyes grew dark. That requires another story, a longer story, about things that still give me nightmares, about humans who learned that mercy is a luxury they could not afford. The recording device continued its steady hum as Vexthul settled back into his chair. His forearms moved restlessly, a sign of deep discomfort that the young officers had learned to recognize. The old warrior's eyes stared at something beyond the walls of the small room. You want to know about the real battles, he said slowly, about what happened after New Montana. The Empire was angry, very angry. We had lost 50 ships to farmers and miners. The High Command could not accept such shame. Officer Krillneck leaned forward. What did they decide to do? Everything, Vexthul replied. Admiral Morthek took command of the human campaign. He brought 300 warships, battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers full of fighter craft, the largest fleet our empire had ever assembled for a single species. Zarhun made notes on her datapad. Where did they strike first? Europa Station, a human mining operation around Jupiter. The Admiral thought it would be easy. A space station with maybe 5,000 humans, workers, engineers, scientists, no military presence, no weapons. The old commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or fear. We were so wrong, so terribly wrong about everything. The station commander was a woman named Rachel Stone. She had been a mining engineer for 20 years, quiet, professional, the kind of human who solved problems with mathematics and careful planning. Vexthul stood and began pacing again. When our fleet arrived, Stone broadcast a message on all frequencies. She said Europa Station would not surrender. She said every human life lost would be paid for with alien blood. Then she did something that made no sense. What did she do? She ordered all the mining ships to form a defensive line, cargo haulers, ore processors, maintenance vessels, nothing designed for combat. Admiral Morthek laughed when he saw them, 300 mining ships against our battle fleet. The warrior paused at the window. The first attack began at dawn, Europa time. Our fighters swept in to clear the space around the station. Easy targets, or so we thought. The mining ships did not try to run. They did not try to hide. Instead, they flew directly at our fighters. The pilots were miners, not soldiers, but they had something our pilots did not expect. What was that? Krillneck asked. Nothing to lose, Vexthul said quietly. A human pilot named Ben Carter rammed his ore hauler into our lead fighter squadron. His ship exploded, but he took 12 of our fighters with him, then another mining. Ship did the same thing, then another. But that was suicide, Zarhun protested. Yes, and humans did it anyway, because Rachel Stone had told them something during their final briefing. She said their families on Earth were counting on them, that every alien ship they destroyed here was one less ship that could attack human children. The old commander returned to his chair. In 1 hour, we lost 60 fighters to mining ships. Admiral Morthek was furious. He ordered the battle cruisers to move in and finish the station quickly. Did they succeed? No. Because Rachel Stone had been busy while we fought her miners. She had turned Europa Station into something new, something deadly. Vexthul's voice grew softer. The station processed ice from Jupiter's moons. Massive chunks of frozen water. Stone's engineers had been loading these ice blocks into the station's cargo launchers, but they were not sending them to Earth anymore. Where were they sending? Them? At us. Blocks of ice the size of buildings launched at incredible speed. Our shields could stop energy weapons. Our armor could resist explosions. But kinetic impact from a mountain of ice moving at orbital velocity? Nothing could stop that. The warrior's hands trembled slightly. The first ice block hit our destroyer Silent Death. The ship simply vanished. One moment it was there. The next it was debris scattered across space. Then another block hit our cruiser Eternal Victory. Then another. How many ships did you lose? 47, Vexthul said. In 3 hours. To ice. Frozen water launched by mining equipment. The Admiral ordered a retreat to regroup. Officer Krillnex looked confused. But you still had more ships than they did. Numbers did not matter anymore. Stone had shown us that humans could turn anything into a weapon. Ice, mining equipment, their own lives. But the worst was yet to come. The old commander took a long drink of water. While we regrouped, more humans arrived, not military ships, civilian vessels, passenger transports, cargo haulers, even cruise ships full of tourists who had volunteered to fight. Tourists? Zarhun asked. Humans who traveled for pleasure, families, old people, children, they came in ships designed for comfort, not war. But they came anyway. A man named Pete Collins led them. He was a teacher who took students on educational trips around the solar system. What could tourists do against a battle fleet? Everything we did not expect, Vexthul replied. Collins had studied our previous battles. He knew our tactics, our weaknesses. He turned his cruise ship into a command center and began coordinating attacks. The humans had no unified command structure, no central military authority. But they did not need one. They organized themselves. Collins talked to Stone. Stone talked to the mining ship captains. Everyone shared information. Everyone worked together. The warrior stood again and walked to the far wall. On the second day, something happened that changed the entire war. A human supply ship called the Lucky Strike approached our fleet. The captain, a woman named Amy Foster, broadcast a surrender message. She said her ship was damaged and requested permission to dock with our flagship. Did Admiral Morthek allow it? Yes. He thought it was a sign that humans were finally coming to their senses. The Lucky Strike docked with our command ship. Captain Foster and her crew were brought aboard as prisoners. Vexthul turned back to face the officers. Foster was a cargo pilot, middle-aged, unremarkable. She cooperated fully with our interrogation, answered all our questions about human defenses, seemed genuinely defeated. What happened? 2 hours after docking, the Lucky Strike exploded. Foster had filled her cargo hold with antimatter, not weapons-grade antimatter. Industrial antimatter used for powering mining equipment. But when it exploded, it took our flagship and 3 escort vessels with it. The old commander's voice became almost a whisper. Foster knew she was going to die. She had recorded a message for her family. In it, she said she was sorry for leaving them, but that some things were more important than staying alive. She said humans had to show the galaxy that they would not be conquered. The explosion was visible from Europa Station. When the humans saw it, they cheered, not because they were happy about death, but because Foster had shown them something important. That one person could make a difference, that sacrifice could change everything. Officer Krillnex made more notes. What did Admiral Morthek do? He went insane, Vexthul said bluntly. The loss of his flagship, the constant attacks, the way humans fought without regard for their own safety. It broke his mind. He ordered every ship in the fleet to attack Europa Station at once. No tactics, no strategy, just overwhelming firepower. Did it work? For a while. The station's defenses were strong, but they could not hold against that much firepower. Rachel Stone's ice launchers were destroyed one by one. The mining ships were reduced to scrap metal. The station itself began to break apart. Then Stone did something that haunts me to this day, Vexthul continued. She opened a communication channel to all human ships, not just at Europa, but throughout the solar system. She said the station was lost, but the fight was not over. She said humans would remember Europa Station. They would remember everyone who died there. What happened to her? She stayed at her post until the end. Even as the station broke apart around her, she kept launching ice blocks at our ships. Her final message was broadcast across the entire human communication network. She said, "Tell Earth we held the line. Tell them Europa Station did not surrender." The old warrior sat down heavily. Stone died when the station's reactor exploded, but her death accomplished something she could never have imagined. It unified every human in the solar system, every colony, every ship, every person who heard her final words. Within hours, human reinforcements began arriving from everywhere. Mars sent its orbital defense platforms. The asteroid belt miners sent their entire fleet. Even Earth's moon bases launched their construction ships loaded with weapons. Vexthul looked directly at both young officers. That is when we realized our mistake. We thought we were fighting separate human colonies, independent settlements that could be conquered one by one. But we were wrong. We were fighting humanity itself. All of them. Together. The Admiral tried to continue the attack, but it was hopeless. For every ship he destroyed, 2 more humans arrived. For every human he killed, 10 more volunteered to fight. The species had become something we had never encountered before. "What was that?" Zarhun asked. "United," Vexthul said simply. "Not by government or military command, but by shared purpose. By the knowledge that they were fighting for their very existence. By the understanding that surrender was not an option." "Admiral, Morthek's final report to the High Command was 3 words long. Send more ships." But the Empire was beginning to understand that more ships would not solve the human problem. Because humans did not fight like other species. They fought like they had nothing left to lose. The recording device hummed on as Vexthul fell silent. The room grew colder as Vexthul prepared to speak again. His forearms crossed over his chest in a defensive gesture that both young officers recognized. The old warrior had reached the part of his story that still woke him in the middle of the night. "The High Command was not pleased with Admiral Morthek's failure at Europa Station," he began. "Losing nearly half a battle fleet to miners and tourists was unacceptable. The Empire's reputation was at stake. Other species were beginning to whisper that perhaps the mighty Zephyrians were not so mighty after all." Officer Zarhun adjusted her recording device. "What did they decide to do?" "Strike at the heart," Vexthul replied. "If humans could unite around the destruction of small colonies, then the Empire would target their homeworld, Earth, the birthplace of humanity, destroy it and break their spirit forever." Krillnex looked up from his notes. "How large was the attack fleet?" "Everything we had," the old commander said grimly. 500 capital ships, 2,000 fighters, 100,000 soldiers, the largest military force our empire had ever assembled. Admiral Kethvar commanded it personally. He was the Empire's greatest military mind. He had conquered 15 species without losing a single battle. Vexthul stood and walked to the window again. Outside, alien children played in a park, their laughter carried on the wind. The sound made him wince. "I was promoted after Europa Station, given command of an assault cruiser called the Final Strike. We were part of the advance force sent to clear Earth's outer defenses." "What did you find when you arrived in the Soli?" "System?" "Nothing," Vexthul said quietly. "The system appeared almost empty. A few cargo ships near Jupiter, some mining operations in the asteroid belt. No military presence, no obvious defenses. It seemed too easy." The warrior turned back to his interrogators. Admiral Kethvar was suspicious. He ordered full scans of the entire system. "What we found should have warned us, should have made us turn around and leave immediately." "What was it?" "Ships. Thousands of them, hidden behind moons, in asteroid fields, inside the rings of Saturn. Not military vessels, civilian craft of every kind. Passenger, liners, cargo haulers, private yachts, school ships, medical transports, even garbage scows and food delivery trucks." Vexthul's mandibles clicked nervously. But they were not civilian anymore. Every ship had been modified. Weapons bolted to hulls, armor welded over, passenger compartments, cargo holds filled with explosives. Humans had turned their entire civilian fleet into a navy. Officer Krillnex frowned. Surely civilian ships could not threaten a proper battle fleet. That is what we thought, the old commander replied. Admiral Kethvar sent me forward with 30 ships to clear the outer system. We approached a small space station orbiting Mars. It looked abandoned. Our scans showed only 50 humans aboard. The station commander was an old woman named Helen Wright. She had been a traffic controller, managing cargo shipments between Mars and Earth. When we demanded surrender, she laughed. Actually laughed at us. What did she say? She said we were welcome to try and take her station. Then she asked if we had ever heard of something called a honey trap. When we said no, she smiled and told us we were about to learn. Vexthul began pacing again. Wright's station was not a defensive position. It was bait. As soon as we moved to attack it, every hidden ship in the system revealed itself. We were surrounded. Completely surrounded by civilian vessels that should not have been able to threaten us. But they did threaten you. They destroyed us, the warrior said bluntly. Not with superior weapons or technology, with numbers, with determination, with tactics that made no military sense but worked anyway. A man named Roy Campbell commanded a converted cruise ship called the Paradise Lost. He had been a vacation planner before the war. His job was making people happy. Now he used that same skill to coordinate attacks that made our admiral weep. With frustration, the old commander sat down again. Campbell's ship was full of families, husbands and wives fighting side by side, children too young to fight but old enough to help. They turned their swimming pools into hydroponic gardens to grow food. Their theaters became strategy rooms. Their kitchens became weapons factories. How could families defeat trained soldiers? Because they were not just fighting for victory, Vexthul explained. They were fighting for each other. When a human sees their child in danger, they become something else. Something that does not care about odds or survival or rational thinking. Campbell's wife, Nancy, ran the ship's medical bay. She treated wounded humans and aliens alike. But she also designed biological weapons using vacation supplies. Cleaning chemicals became poison gas. Swimming pool maintenance equipment became chemical weapons dispensers. The warrior's voice grew softer. Their daughter, little Beth Campbell, was 8 years old. She drew pictures of the battle and sent them to other human ships. Childish drawings of stick figures fighting monsters. But those drawings became symbols. Humans would paint them on their ships, on their weapons, on their armor. One drawing showed a small stick figure holding hands with bigger stick figures, all of them standing in front of Earth. At the bottom, Beth had written, "My family protects me." It became the most famous image of the war. Officer Zarhun looked up from her notes. What happened during the battle? Chaos, Vexthul replied. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Human ships attacked from every direction. Some tried to ram us. Others launched boarding parties. A few simply exploded next to our hulls, taking our ships with them. But the most frightening thing was their communication. Every human ship was talking to every other human ship, sharing information, coordinating attacks, warning each other about dangers. They fought like a single organism with thousands of bodies. The old commander's hands trembled as he reached for his water. A human pilot named Steve Martinez flew a garbage scow into our battlecruiser Endless Glory. His ship was full of trash and recycling from Earth's cities. When it exploded, it spread debris across space. Harmless debris that clogged our engines and fouled our sensors. Then a school ship full of teachers and children attacked our flagship. The teacher in charge was a woman named Carol Davis. She had been teaching human children about space exploration. Now she used that knowledge to find weaknesses in our ship designs. Children helped with the attack? The older ones did, Vexthul said grimly. Teenagers who should have been studying and playing instead calculated firing solutions and managed damage control. One boy, maybe 15 years old, repaired battle damage while his ship was under fire. His name was Tim Johnson. He had been studying to become an engineer. When our boarding parties reached his ship, Tim was still at his post fixing a damaged engine. He looked up at our soldiers and asked if they needed help with anything, as if enemy warriors in his engine room was just another problem to solve. The warrior stood and walked to the far wall. But the moment that broke Admiral HFY happened 3 days into the battle. A human medical ship called the Mercy approached our damaged cruiser Dark Victory. The ship's commander, Dr. Sarah Kim, requested permission to treat our wounded. Did the Admiral allow it? Yes, he thought it might be a trap, but our wounded needed help. Dr. Kim and her team came aboard and began treating alien injuries. They worked for hours, saving lives, asking nothing in return. Then what happened? While Dr. Kim worked in our medical bay, her ship's crew was doing something else. They were studying our technology, learning how our systems worked, recording everything for other human ships to use. Vexthul's voice became almost a whisper. When Dr. Kim finished treating our wounded, she gave Admiral HFY a data pad. On it was a complete analysis of our ship's weaknesses, every flaw in our design, every way to exploit our technology against us. She had healed our warriors while her people learned how to kill them more efficiently. What did the Admiral do? He stared at the data pad for a long time. Then he asked Dr. Kim why she had given it to him. She said it was only fair, that humans believed in fighting honorably, even against enemies who had tried to destroy their children. The old commander returned to his chair. That night, Admiral HFY sent a message to the High Command. It was one sentence long. We are not fighting soldiers. We are fighting an entire species that treats war like a family protecting its children. The battle continued for 6 more days. We lost ship after ship to humans who should not have been able to threaten us. Families working together, children helping their parents fight, old people sharing wisdom about tactics and strategy. Finally, Admiral HFY ordered a retreat. Not because we were losing, but because he realized we could never win. Every human we killed was replaced by 2 more volunteers. Every ship we destroyed was replaced by converted civilian craft. But the worst part was yet to come, Vexthul continued. As we retreated, a human admiral named Frank Peterson broadcast a message to our entire fleet. He said humans appreciated our visit, but next time we should call ahead. Then he invited us to stay for dinner. He invited you to dinner? While we were retreating from a battle that had cost us 200 ships and thousands of lives, humans were inviting us to eat with them, as if the whole thing had been a misunderstanding between neighbors. The old warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly. The silence in the room stretched for several minutes. Vexthul sat motionless, his multiple eyes fixed on his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You must understand something before I continue, he said to the young officers. Everything I have told you so far, all the battles, all the death, all the horror, that was humans holding back. That was them following their own rules of war, being civilized, showing mercy. Officer Krillneck shifted uncomfortably in his chair. What do you mean holding back? Humans have laws about war, Vexthul explained. Rules about protecting civilians, about treating prisoners fairly, about not using certain weapons. Even while we were trying to destroy them, they followed these rules. They fought to defend themselves, not to hurt others. Zarhun looked up from her notes. But that changed? When we built the planet killers, yes, everything changed. Because humans realized that our empire did not care about rules, that we would murder entire worlds full of innocent people to win, that their children would never be safe as long as we existed. The old warrior stood and walked to the window. The High Command built 12 planet killer weapons, massive ships designed to crack worlds in half. They planned to use them on Earth, on Mars, on every human colony, to end the human species completely. What did the humans do when they learned about this? They sent a message to the High Command, Vexthul said. A single sentence. If you will not follow the rules of war, then there will be no rules. It was signed by someone called the Human War Council. Who were they? We never found out. The humans had created a new command structure, secret, hidden. People who made decisions that normal human leaders could not make. Decisions about things that civilized people should never have to consider. Vexthul returned to his chair, moving like an old man despite his relatively young age. 3 days after that message, something happened that still gives me nightmares. Our most secure base in the Sol system simply vanished. Vanished? Officer Krillnex asked. Titan base, built on Saturn's largest moon, 50,000 soldiers, the most advanced defensive systems in the Empire, protected by energy shields that could stop anything. It was supposed to be our staging area for the final attack on Earth. The old commander's hands began to shake. I was stationed there. Deputy, Commander of Security. The base was a fortress. Underground tunnels carved deep into the moon's ice. Living quarters for an entire army. Weapons stockpiles that could supply a war for years. What happened to it? Humans, Vexthul said simply, but not the humans we had been fighting. These were different. They called themselves special operations. Soldiers trained to fight wars that normal people could not fight. The team was led by a man named Danny Wright, not related to Helen Wright from the Mars station, but they shared the same determination, the same willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect their people. The warrior paused, gathering his thoughts. Wright's team was 12 humans, 12 people against 50,000 aliens in the most secure base in the galaxy. It should have been impossible. It should have been suicide. How did they get inside? We still do not know. Our sensors never detected them. Our guards never saw them. One day the base was secure, the next day we were all dead or dying. All, except me. Vexthul's voice grew even quieter. It started with the air. Titan base was closed system. All air recycled through central processors. Wright's team had introduced something into our air supply. Not poison. Something worse. What was it? Human bacteria. Modified to affect Zephyrian biology. It did not kill us quickly. Instead, it made us sick, weak, unable to think clearly. Our soldiers began making mistakes, forgetting procedures, falling asleep at their posts. While we struggled with sickness, Wright's team moved through the base like ghosts. They knew our layout better than we did. They had studied our defensive systems, learned our routines, understood our weaknesses. The old commander stood again and began pacing. On the second day, our weapons began malfunctioning. Rifles that would not fire, energy cannons that exploded when activated, vehicle engines that failed without warning. How were they doing this? Wright had a team member named Lisa Barnes. She had been a computer programmer before the war. She specialized in something humans called hacking, breaking into systems that were supposed to be secure. Barnes did, not just disable our weapons. She turned them against us. Our own security systems began targeting Zephyrian soldiers. Our doors would lock, trapping our people in rooms. Our elevators would malfunction, crushing anyone inside. Vexthul stopped pacing and looked directly at both officers. But the worst part was the psychological warfare. Humans had learned how to break our minds. How? Sounds. Images. Messages that appeared on our communication screens. Wright's team had studied Zephyrian psychology. They knew what frightened us, what made us panic, what turned brave soldiers into terrified children. They played recordings of human children singing, the same songs we had heard at New Montana, but now they sounded different, threatening, like promises of revenge. Our soldiers began to crack under the pressure. The old warrior sat down heavily. On the third day, I encountered one of Wright's team directly, a woman named Amy Carter. She was treating wounded Zephyrian soldiers in our medical bay. Treating your wounded? Why? Because humans still followed some of their rules, even in this new kind of war. Carter was a combat medic. Her job was to save lives. She could not stop doing that, even when those lives belonged to enemies. But while she worked, she asked questions. Where did we come from? Did we have families? What did we think about the war? She seemed genuinely interested in our answers. Vexthul's mandibles clicked rapidly. I thought she was gathering intelligence, information to use against us. But I was wrong. Carter was doing something much more dangerous. She was making us see humans as people, not enemies, not targets. Just people trying to protect their families. What did that accomplish? It broke our will to fight. When you see your enemy as a person, when you understand their motivations, When you realize they are not evil but just different, it becomes very hard to kill them. Carter treated my injuries from the bacterial infection. While she worked, she told me about her children. 2 daughters, ages 6 and 9. She showed me pictures. Beautiful little girls with bright smiles. The old commander's voice cracked slightly. Then she asked me about my own children. When I told her I had 3 sons, she asked what they liked to do, what games they played, what made them laugh. By the time she finished treating me, I could not stop thinking about those human children, about how they must be afraid, about how the war was hurting them too. Where was Danny Wright during all this? Everywhere and nowhere, Vexthul replied. Wright seemed to be in every part of the base at once. Our soldiers reported seeing him in the command center, in the weapons depot, in the residential areas, all at the same time. How was that possible? We think his team had technology we did not understand, stealth devices, holographic projectors, ways to make one person appear to be many people. Or maybe Wright was just that good at what he did. On the 4th day, Wright appeared on every screen in the base. He looked tired, sad, like a man who had been forced to do things he did not want to do. What did he say? He said the base was lost, that every Zephyrian inside would be dead within hours, but he offered us a choice: surrender and be taken prisoner, or continue fighting and die with the base. Vexthul's hands trembled as he reached for his water. Most of our soldiers chose to surrender, not because they were cowards, but because they had seen what humans could do. They understood that continuing to fight was pointless. But some soldiers refused to surrender. Our base commander, General Thekmar, ordered a final assault on the human positions, 2,000 soldiers against 12 humans. What happened? Wright's team vanished, simply disappeared into the base's ventilation systems. But they left behind gifts for us, explosive devices hidden throughout the base, not just bombs, sophisticated weapons that could target specific species, specific biologies. The assault lasted 6 hours. Our soldiers fought against enemies they could not see, could not catch, could not understand. Wright's team struck from shadows, from air vents, from places that should have been impossible to reach. When it was over, General Thekmar was dead. Most of his assault force was dead. The base's main reactor was damaged beyond repair. We had maybe 2 hours before complete systems failure. The old warrior stood one final time. That is when Danny Wright appeared again. Not on screens this time, in person. He walked into the command center alone, unarmed, and offered to evacuate the surviving Zephyrians. Did you accept? I did. I was the ranking officer left alive. Wright's team helped us reach the escape pods. They gave us medical supplies, food, even messages to send to our families. As my pod launched, Wright handed me a data pad. On it was a complete recording of everything his team had done, every technique they had used, every weakness they had exploited, every rule of war they had broken. Why did he give you that? He said humans wanted us to understand something. That Titan base was not about victory or conquest. It was a message, a demonstration of what humans could do when they stopped playing by civilized rules. The old warrior's voice was barely a whisper now. His forearms wrapped around his body as if trying to protect himself from memories that could not be stopped. The young officer sat perfectly still, afraid to break the silence that filled the small room. The final fleet was magnificent, Vexthul began. 1,000 capital ships, the pride of our empire. Every ship captain was a veteran. Every soldier was elite. The Emperor himself blessed the mission. We called it the Great Cleansing. Officer Krillnex leaned forward slightly. You were part of this fleet? I commanded a battlecruiser called the Righteous Fury. My crew was handpicked, the best warriors our species had ever produced. We had studied every human tactic, prepared for every possible defense. We thought we were ready for anything. Zarhun made careful notes. What was the plan? Simple. Overwhelming force. Hit Earth with everything at once. No mercy, no prisoners. Complete annihilation of the human species. Admiral Gorthan commanded the fleet. He was our greatest military leader. He had never lost a battle in 40 years of service. The old commander stood and walked to the window one last time. The alien children in the park had gone home. The streets were quiet in the gathering darkness. We expected massive resistance when we reached the Sol system. Every human ship they could find. Desperate last stands. Fighting to the death. Instead, we found something that chilled us to our cores. What did you find? Nothing, Vexthul said simply. The system was empty. No ships, no defenses, no resistance at all. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, completely unprotected. Were the humans hiding again? No. They had left. All of them. Every human in the Sol system had evacuated. Earth was empty. Mars was empty. Every colony, every station, every settlement. Gone. The warrior turned back to face the officers. Admiral Gorthon was suspicious. He ordered full scans of every planet, every moon, every asteroid. Nothing. No human presence anywhere in their home system. At first, we thought they had run away. That the threat of our great fleet had finally broken their spirit. Some of our captains wanted to declare victory and return home. But Admiral Gorthon was wiser than that. What did he do? He sent scouts to the nearest human colonies, to Alpha Centauri, to Wolf 359, to Epsilon Eridani. All empty. Every human settlement in a 50 light-year radius had been abandoned. Vexthul sat down again, his movements slow and careful. That is when we received the message, broadcast on every frequency from every direction at once, as if the universe itself was speaking to us. What did it say? It was from someone called the Human War Council, the same group that had sent the warning about rules, but this message was different, longer, more detailed, more terrifying. The old commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. The message said that humans had studied our species for 3 years, learned everything about us, our biology, our psychology, our technology, our culture, our weaknesses. It said that humans had developed weapons specifically designed to kill Zephyrians, not just individuals, not just armies, the entire species, every man, woman, and child in our empire. Officer Krillnex looked pale. What kind of weapons? Their message did not say. It did not need to. Because then it told us something that made our blood freeze. It gave us the location of our homeworld, not just the star system, the exact coordinates of our capital city, the address of the emperor's palace, the names of our children. How could they know that information? Because while we had been fighting their soldiers, their scientists had been studying us. Every piece of technology we used, every biological sample they could collect, every prisoner we had exchanged, every diplomatic contact. Vexthul's voice grew even quieter. The message said that at that very moment human ships were positioned around every major Zephyrian world. Not visible, not detectable by our sensors, but there, waiting. Waiting for what? For our decision. The message gave us a choice. Withdraw our fleet from human space and never return, or watch our entire civilization die in the next 24 hours. The old warrior reached for his water with shaking hands. Admiral Gorthon thought it was a bluff. How could humans who had been struggling to defend a few colonies suddenly threaten our entire empire? He ordered the fleet to continue toward Earth. What happened? 6 hours later, we received another message. This one was different. It came with visual proof. Images of our homeworld taken from orbit, pictures of our cities, our schools, our nurseries where our children played. The voice this time belonged to a human named Frank Davis. He spoke our language perfectly. He knew our customs, our history, our fears. He said he was sorry for what was about to happen, but humans had no choice. Vexthul stood and began pacing again. Davis said humans had tried to fight honorably, had tried to follow rules, had tried to show mercy. But our empire had forced them to abandon honor, to abandon rules, to abandon mercy. He said that in 30 minutes every Zephyrian world would receive a demonstration of human capabilities. Not an attack, just a demonstration, to show us what would happen if we did not withdraw. Did the demonstration happen? Yes, the old commander said. his voice breaking slightly. At exactly the time Davis had specified, our homeworld's primary moon simply vanished. Not destroyed, not blown apart. Vanished, as if it had never existed. How is that possible? We still do not know. Our scientists have studied the data for 3 years. The moon was there one moment, gone the next. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature, nothing. Then Davis spoke again. He said the same thing could happen to any planet in our empire, that humans had built weapons that could erase entire worlds from existence, that they had positioned these weapons around every major Zephyrian colony. Vexthul stopped pacing and faced the young officers directly, but then he said something that was even more terrifying than the demonstration. He said humans did not want to use these weapons, that they preferred peace, that they would rather be friends than enemies. Friends? Zarhun asked. Davis said, that if our empire withdrew from human space and never attacked them again, humans would share their technology with us, help us advance, trade with us, even help us fight other enemies if needed. But if we continued the war, if we ever threatened human children again, then every Zephyrian in the galaxy would be dead within hours, not killed in battle, not defeated in war, simply erased from existence as if we had never been born. The old warrior sat down for the final time. Admiral Gorthon was a proud man, a warrior who had never retreated from any enemy. But he was also wise enough to recognize when he was beaten. He ordered the entire fleet to withdraw immediately. The Emperor agreed to the human terms the next day. Unconditional surrender, immediate withdrawal from all human territory, a promise never to threaten humanity again. Officer Krillnex looked confused. But why did humans spare us if they had such powerful weapons? Why not use them? Because, Vexthul said slowly, humans are not monsters. They never were. Even after everything we did to them, even after we forced them to become something terrible, they still chose mercy when they could have chosen extinction. But they made sure we understood the choice. Davis sent one final message to our Emperor. It said that humans would remember this war forever, that they would never forget the species that had tried to murder their children. He said that humanity would grow stronger, that they would spread across the galaxy, that they would meet other species, make other friends, face other enemies. But they would always remember who had taught them that mercy was a luxury they could not always afford. The message ended with a promise and a warning. The promise was that humans would never attack first. They would always try to find peaceful solutions. They would help other species when they could. The warning was simpler: never threaten human children again. Because the weapons that had erased our moon were still out there, still waiting, still ready to erase anyone who forgot the lesson of this war. Vexthul looked directly at both young officers. That was 3 years ago. Since then, humans have kept their promise. They have shared technology with dozens of species, helped colonies that were threatened by pirates, even sent medical aid to Zephyrian worlds when disease struck. But they have also kept their warning. 2 other species tried to attack human settlements in the last 3 years. One had their capital ship vanish during battle. The other had their weapons simply stop working. Both surrendered immediately. Humans never brag about these victories. They never threaten anyone. They act like the kind, peaceful species they always wanted to be. But everyone in the galaxy knows the truth. Officer Zarhun set down her datapad. What truth is that? That somewhere in the darkness between stars, human ships are watching, waiting, ready to protect their children from anyone foolish enough to threaten them. That humanity learned the most important lesson of war. It is not about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It is about being willing to do whatever is necessary to protect the people you love. The old warriors multiple, eyes focused on memories that would never fade. You asked me to explain how humans defeated our empire. The answer is simple. They did not defeat us. They adopted us. They made us part of their extended family. And families protect each other, even from family members who make mistakes.